The inside of a bowl is where we get the most overhang in wood turning, and I've selected 3 different gouges here to show when leverage becomes a problem and also the diameter of the bar becomes a problem. I've got a 1/2 inch diameter bowl gouge and a 5/8. These are both the same style bowl gouge with a 40-degree bevel, 40-degree swept back straight wing, and then for across the very bottom of the bowl where these two won't function very well at all, I've got what I call a bottom bowl gouge. That is ground with a 50-degree bevel is optimum, but I will go to 70 if I have to for a narrower, taller bowl. And the wings are barely swept back, barely 5 degrees, so it looks a little bit like a mini spindle roughing gouge. Now as I work my way in, the 1/2 inch bowl gouge is much more comfortable because it's small and easy to manipulate in this area here, but as I get deeper, it'll start to flex and then I'll start to lose leverage because the handle isn't long enough as I get much further off the tool rest. Now we can use a curved tool rest, but I generally use a straight tool rest and tilt it in, but in certain cuts it will not benefit me at all at the very end of the cut near the base of the bowl. With a side grain bowl, the more I can cut straight in, the more comfortable the cut will be. The more I'm cutting in at an angle or straight across, then I'm running into portions of end grain. So I have to start by forming enough shape to be able to get my gouge to be able to go in straighter, and eventually with this bowl being enclosed, I'll need to bring my handle around further to undercut, and that's more comfortable with a slightly smaller gouge. So I'm going to make a little bit of space. I'm also going to be doing some side cutting here, very little overhang here, just peeling away the side grain and pushing this out of the way so I have a good area to start on. We could hear at the end of this cut, in this position, there was starting to be an amplified sound, and that is because the gouge is a little past its limit. Recommended not to go more than 2.5 inches without some flex. I'm still able to cut, so I'm just pushing my way in. So it is making the steel flex a little bit, and that's where a larger gouge would be beneficial. But I'm going to continue with this gouge so I can finish the rim area and show you that I can do a rim with some pattern to it much more comfortably with this small gouge than I can with the next size up. So if I was going to make a pattern on the rim, I would do it at this stage with a smaller gouge. It's going to be more comfortable. Now cutting in this area is not too bad. I probably wouldn't sharpen the gouge, but for the undercut here, I've done several heavy cuts, and that's going to definitely have taken the best of the edge off here. And the inside of a bowl, especially undercut, is very vulnerable to torn grain. So although I may have the gouge that's got enough strength to get me that distance, very comfortable to cut with, it will be slightly dull. I'm going to put a quick shaped rim on this. Then I'm going to sharpen the gouge and then see how far it goes before I start to completely lose control. And also you'll see the handle will start to lift because I just don't have the leverage. So I've resharpened my 40-40 bowl gouge, and I have ensured that the bevel is reduced in length because I am going around a concave surface. And this is one of the most important places in wood turning to ensure that you get the very best finish, because I'm actually cutting slightly in the wrong direction with the grain in this area. And also it's very difficult to sand in there. It would be difficult to power sand because to get a drill in there would be tricky. And also it's an area where there's a lot of end grain, and this is slightly spalted wood. So I have to cut it as best I can because I don't want to be fixing torn grain with sandpaper. The other thing I'm going to do here is, if I try to do my entry cut, because the lip is beveled in, I've got a lot of overhang for start of a cut. So I'm going to actually take advantage of moving the tool rest in slightly, bringing it in a little bit closer. So what I have is my tool rest coming in at 90 degrees to the angle I'm going to cut. I'm going to undercut to the right thickness, and then I'm going to go further and further in with the bowl gouge and see when I start to lose control with this diameter of bowl gouge. So I've completed my finish cut on the inside here. It's slightly undercut. The end grain is nice and clean. There's no torn grain to fix with sandpaper. I'm now going to take the gouge as far as I can before we start to hear excessive vibration, and also even with my hand at the end, I'll start to lose some control of leverage. It'll start to lift a little bit, but let's see how far it is before I have that problem. We can hear from the last cut the tool starting to flex. There's some excess noise, and there's a couple of cuts where I was roughing down where the handle was starting to lift, and that is simply I don't have enough leverage. Now I'm also on the outer part of the tool rest, and you might think, well, if I move it in, do I gain anything? I won't. Let's just see that. So even if I move the tool rest in, I'm still resting almost on the same part of the tool rest. So there's almost no benefit in this particular shaped bowl to move it in. So I'm going to leave it where it is. See if I can take a light cut around here. Now remember, it's done a lot of roughing, so if you've got a little bit of concern about the edge quality, I'd give it a resharpen. I think it won't be too dull for this area, but we'll see when I do a light finishing cut. So we're definitely at the limit of this 1/2 inch bowl gouge. Several reasons. One is with a 40-degree bevel and the undercut lip, as I come around the corner, I'm almost about to hit the rim of the bowl. We can see we're beyond 2.5 inches. We're near a 3.5, so it's flexing. And as we saw before, when I took heavy cuts, it was lifting the handle. This is the time to change to a heavier gouge. I'm going to go to a 40-40 bowl gouge, 5/8 diameter, to remove some of the bulk in the middle, but it's going to have the same problem. Because of the 40-degree angle, it's not going to make it all the way around, and I'm going to have to basically just remove some of the bulk and go to a bottom bowl gouge to complete this bowl. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to remove the shaped rim and just make it a thin wall bowl just to show overhang, because with this shape of bowl I can't get as far around with this gouge or close to its limit because I'm running out of swing before I'm running out of leverage or overhang. So I'm going to turn this bowl into a regular thin wall bowl without the rim shape. So I'm going to put the tool rest back to its regular position at the front and remove this. I wouldn't be able to do this if the bowl had warped at this stage, but it hasn't yet warped. And I am turning a piece of green wood. It's not soaking wet, but it's certainly not dry. And it's just for demonstration purposes. I'd always recommend rough turning or twice turning a bowl before I get to this stage. But for this scenario here, let's just remove that and show the overhang. So I resharpened my gouge to ensure that I got a clean end grain cut around the inner surface. I removed the rim of the bowl so you can see that I can get a bit more of an arc. I can still go a little further before I hit the rim of the bowl. And as you can see, I'm not losing any leverage control. I'm not getting any lifting. And so this tool is quite capable of cutting this distance. And with a 5/8 diameter, I'm well within the limit, which I recommend is about 4.5 to 5 inches before you really see any problems with flex. So if we look at the distance I was overhanging, it is about 4.5, maybe it's 5 inches there, and I certainly have more than 5 to 1 behind me. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, almost 6. So I was well within control at any stage. And you can go down to 3 to 1 if you're doing very light finishing cuts, but if you're taking any bulk whatsoever, then you will not be in control of the tool if you're hanging off the tool rest more than 5 to 1. So for very light finishing cuts, it's not an issue to reduce that ratio, but I'm taking fairly heavy cuts and I want to be in control because I don't want to be fixing this with sandpaper in there. Now what I need to do is to change over to a different style of gouge, because as I keep the bevel in contact and I go around the corner, I'm about to hit the rim of the bowl, and if I do swing a bit further, I'll either be taking my bevel off so that I don't hit the rim of the bowl, or I'll hit the rim and I'll break it. So it has to be changed. So I'm changing to a bottom bowl gouge, and let's take a closer look at that. So with this particular bottom bowl gouge, I have a U-shaped flute. It has approximately a 50, maybe it's a 55 degree. I freehand ground it to produce this. It doesn't want to be 40, because if it's 40, I have the same problem. I'll be swinging around the corner and hitting the rim. Here, I can have bevel contact long before I've hit the rim. Now, if I go around the corner and I can't make it to the middle with that angle, and I start to get too close to the rim of the bowl again, then I'll go up the grinder, lift the handle a little higher than I did before, regrind the nose to maybe reduce it to 55, 60, and 70 would be the very lowest angle I would have on that. If I go lower than 70 on this guy, the problem I have is it just doesn't cut very well, and I start pressing too hard to find the cut. The thing to remember with our style of wood turning here at SB Wood Turning is we don't control the tool with our left hand. You'll notice once I've got the cut started, I'm releasing with my left. I've got nothing behind the tool, so I'm not palming or fulcruming here. I'm not pushing with my thumb. In fact, I don't even put my thumb behind the blade because it becomes a fulcrum point. This stage also I need to reduce my tool rest height. The gouge is a little bit bigger, but I also want some upward angle. So I've taken a little bit of the middle out with the tool rest in its standard position. Let's angle it in and let's see what benefits there are from doing that. Now it's definitely going to help me at the beginning of the cut, but not at the end. So at the beginning of the cut here, I can get in a little bit closer, well in fact considerably closer, but at the end of the cut, I'll be finishing in the middle right here, and in fact, the angle on this tool rest would be too much. I might be tempted to slide off, so I need to draw that back a little bit. So that's the closest I can get in there. So again, I have reduced the overhang at the beginning of the cut, but as I come around and finish the cut, I'm almost back to the identical position as if I had the tool rest straight across the face. So what I'm using is a strong enough bar, 3/4 inch diameter, and a long enough handle to cope with that type of overhang. The only advantage may be with a curved rest, if it was the right shape, that I'm able to get a little bit closer and be resting on a tool rest further in. But in this case, we're showing you that it can be done with leverage, the long enough tool, big enough diameter. It's not an issue. Getting close to the last cut, if I'm concerned about the grain, I'll sharpen it up. But this is a 10V tool, so it keeps an edge considerably longer than M2. And it's not lifting the fibers at all. So here I'm able to take a very controlled cut, but look at the amount of swing at the bottom of the bowl here. Very considerable for this tool to get from where the 40-degree bowl gouge couldn't make it any further to this bottom bowl gouge. And from here I'm able to make the swing. No body contact, as you'll notice. I'm using leverage. I'm not bracing the tool in any way because this would want to lift the tool. I'm using the full length of the handle. It's a very comfortable, very controlled cut. And slowing down as I get towards the middle is important because the lathe is actually running, not slower revolutions, but slower feet per minute. So I need to reduce my speed. And notice I finished the center of the flute of the gouge to the very center so I can complete the cut and obviously never pass center. Let's measure the amount of overhang I actually had and compare it to the ratio we should have, which is 5:1 for a gouge, especially that this gouge can remove quite a bit of bulk. You can take a fairly heavy cut. Approximately 5.5 inches. And we're 28 inches behind. So with 5.5 here, 28 behind, I'm right on the 5:1. If I'm taking lighter cuts, I could go further over the tool rest. If I'm taking heavy cuts, aggressive cuts, then I would probably go to an even longer handle, maybe it's a 30-inch handle to give me that extra leverage. And notice for bowl turning, with the inside of bowls, the handle never actually gets in the way of my body. As long as I'm moving with the tool, and even if it was longer, it would just go past my body, always with the right foot forward because I'm right-handed.